Apache woman was dragged to his ranch, but the rancher redeemed himself beyond belief. Her Apache village was small, but it was a place filled with life, laughter, and a deep sense of community. Every morning, she would wake to the sounds of birds singing and the distant clatter of horseshoes on dirt paths. The village elders, her parents, and the other members of the tribe had shaped her into a thoughtful, strong, and careful young woman. Naomi loved her life, simple as it was, and she cherished the traditions that had been passed down from generation to generation. She spent her days helping her mother gather herbs and prepare food, learning the stories of her ancestors, and listening to the elders speak of courage, honor, and the spirit of the land. One quiet morning, Naomi noticed that the air felt different. The wind carried a strange scent, and the usual warmth of the sun seemed to carry a weight she couldn't explain. She was out near the edge of the village, picking wildflowers when she first saw them. Men on horseback appeared on the horizon, riding faster than anyone she had ever seen in her village. There was a harshness in their movements, a sense of purpose that made her uneasy. Naomi's heart began to pound in her chest. She had heard stories from the elders about travelers and outsiders, but she had never imagined encountering them so close to home. Before she could run or hide, the men had reached her. Naomi tried to speak, to plead with them, but they were silent and determined. In an instant, she was lifted onto one of the horses, unable to resist their strength. Her cries for help echoed across the open plains, but the wind carried them away before anyone could hear. Naomi felt a cold fear wrap around her chest like a heavy blanket. She had never felt so powerless, so disconnected from the life she loved and the people who had always protected her. As they rode away from the village, Naomi clutched at the sides of the horse, tears streaming down her face, and wondered what would become of her. The journey was long, and Naomi had time to think. She thought of her family, of her friends, of the elders who had always guided her with gentle wisdom. She thought of the stories they had told her about courage and survival, and she tried to hold onto the lessons she had learned. Fear was strong, but so was a small flicker of determination within her. Naomi promised herself that she would find a way to endure whatever was coming, that she would not let despair take over completely. But as the miles stretched on and the village disappeared behind the rolling hills, she felt the crushing weight of uncertainty pressing down on her. Finally, the men arrived at a ranch far from Naomi's home. It was a large place, surrounded by fences and dotted with wooden buildings and corrals filled with horses and cattle. Naomi had never seen anything like it before. The ranch seemed enormous and harsh, with wide open spaces that were beautiful in their own way but also intimidating. She was led off the horse and brought before the rancher, a man named Elias. He was a tall, strong figure, with eyes that seemed to hold both sharpness and depth. Naomi could sense an intensity about him that was unlike anything she had encountered. He spoke little at first, his voice calm but firm, and Naomi felt a mixture of fear and curiosity. Elias watched Naomi carefully, noticing the fear in her eyes, the tension in her posture. He had not expected to meet someone like her, someone who carried both fragility and inner strength. Naomi, on the other hand, could not understand the man in front of her. She saw only the authority he commanded, the way he moved with confidence, and she assumed the worst. Her mind raced with questions. Why had she been brought here? What did this man want from her? Could she ever return to her village? In the days that followed, Naomi's life at the ranch was a whirlwind of new experiences, challenges, and fears. She was given tasks to do, small at first but steadily increasing in responsibility. She learned to navigate the routines of ranch life, from feeding animals to tending to the land. Every task was unfamiliar, and every mistake made her anxious. Naomi often felt out of place, missing the comforting presence of her family and the familiar patterns of her village life. Yet, Even in those first days, she noticed moments of humanity in Elias' behavior. He was strict, yes, but he was not cruel. He corrected mistakes without anger, and sometimes he offered guidance with a quiet patience that surprised her. Despite the fear that lingered in her heart, Naomi found herself observing the ranch, the land, and the animals in a new light. There was beauty here, she realized, even in the harshness. The sunrises were spectacular, painting the sky in shades of orange, pink, and purple. The horses were graceful and strong, and the cattle moved with a rhythm that seemed almost like a dance. Naomi began to see that this place, though frightening at first, held its own kind of order and life. She still longed for her home, but she also found herself learning, absorbing, and adapting to the new world around her. At night, when the ranch grew quiet and Naomi lay on a simple cot in the small room she had been given, she thought about her life before this. She thought about the lessons of the elders, the stories of bravery, and the importance of resilience. Naomi realized that, even though she had been taken from her home, she still carried her strength within her. She could not change what had happened, but she could control how she responded. Each day became a test of her courage, her ability to adapt, and her willingness to see beyond fear. Over time, Naomi began to notice small gestures from Elias that hinted at a deeper character. He would ensure she had enough food. He never pushed her beyond what she could handle, and he occasionally shared small insights about ranch life. Though she could not fully trust him yet, she began to sense that there was more to him than the stern exterior she had first feared. This recognition sparked a quiet curiosity within her. Perhaps, she thought, there was room for understanding, even in the most unlikely circumstances. Naomi also found ways to maintain her connection to her culture. She would hum the songs her mother taught her, practice the movements of traditional dances when no one was watching, and whisper the words of the elders' stories to herself. These small acts helped her keep her identity alive and reminded her that she was more than her circumstances. She was a young Apache woman with her own strength, courage, and spirit, and no matter where she was, that could never be taken from her. As days turned into weeks, Naomi's initial fear began to settle into a cautious awareness. She learned the routines of the ranch, observed the patterns of the animals, and even began to understand some of Elias' expectations. Each day was a mix of challenge and discovery, fear and adaptation. Naomi knew that the journey ahead would be difficult, but she also began to recognize that her ability to endure, to observe, and to learn could shape her experience in ways she had never imagined. In those first days, Naomi faced uncertainty, fear, and isolation, but she also experienced the first glimpses of resilience, courage, and hope. She was far from home, brought into a world she had never known, but she carried within her the lessons of her people, the strength of her ancestors, and the determination to survive. Naomi's journey was just beginning, and though the road ahead was unknown, the seeds of endurance and understanding were already taking root in her heart. By the end of this first chapter of her life at the ranch, Naomi had begun to realize that fear, while powerful, was not absolute. Within her was the capacity to observe, to adapt, and to find small pieces of light in even the darkest moments. The open skies of her homeland may have been far away, but the spirit of her people, the courage of her heart, and the unfolding mystery of the ranch life gave her a reason to keep moving forward. Each day was a step into the unknown, and with every step, Naomi discovered a little more about herself, about the man who had brought her here, and about the strange, beautiful, and challenging world she now called home. Naomi had been at the ranch for several weeks now, and each day brought a new challenge. The initial fear that had gripped her during her arrival had not entirely disappeared, but it had softened into a careful wariness. She had begun to learn the rhythms of ranch life, the early mornings, the chores that seemed endless, and the ways the animals responded to human hands. Despite this, Naomi often felt like a stranger in a world that was both fascinating and frightening. Elias, the rancher, observed her quietly. He noticed how her eyes would dart nervously whenever she saw the fences or heard the distant calls of the horses. He could see the tension in her posture when she carried out her tasks, and the way she sometimes paused to watch the animals, as if trying to understand them without fully trusting them. Elias understood fear because he had known it himself in his life, in different ways. He recognized that Naomi's fear was not just of the ranch, but of the unknown, of being far from her family and everything familiar. Naomi's days were filled with labor. She learned to feed the horses, to clean the stalls, and to tend to the cattle. Every task was physically demanding, but also mentally exhausting, because she had to constantly pay attention to the expectations of Elias. He was strict, precise, and sometimes seemed distant, but he was never cruel. Naomi learned that mistakes were corrected, not punished, though the corrections could be sharp. At first, she bristled at this, feeling frustrated and resentful. She could not understand why she had been brought here or why she had to endure such challenges far from her home. The cultural differences also created tension. Naomi was used to the communal life of her village, where people worked together, shared stories, and celebrated small victories. The ranch, however, operated on a strict hierarchy. Each person had a role, and interactions were often brief and functional. Naomi felt isolated, missing the warmth and connection she had known. She longed for conversation, for laughter, for the sense of belonging that had been her life until this moment. In those quiet evenings as she worked alone, she thought often of her family and the traditions that shaped her. She whispered songs from her childhood, hoping to keep her spirit alive amidst the loneliness. Elias, meanwhile, began to notice subtle changes in Naomi. Despite her fear, there was a strength in her that could not be ignored. She worked diligently, even when the tasks were difficult or uncomfortable. She observed, learned, and adapted in ways that spoke of intelligence and resilience. Elias could see that her spirit had not been broken, only challenged. This recognition sparked something in him, a mixture of curiosity, respect, and a growing sense of responsibility. He realized that Naomi was not just a stranger or a worker. She was a human being with fears, hopes, and a life that mattered. One day, Naomi faced a particular challenge that tested her patience and courage. A group of horses had become restless, their hooves pounding against the stable floor, their eyes wide with fear. Naomi was tasked with calming them, but the animals were larger and stronger than she had anticipated. She hesitated at first, unsure of how to approach them safely. Fear surged in her chest and her hands trembled. Elias noticed immediately. He did not scold her, but instead approached calmly, offering quiet instructions and demonstrating how to gain the horse's trust. Naomi watched carefully, mimicking his movements, and slowly she began to succeed. By the end of the task, she felt a small triumph. She had faced fear and uncertainty and had emerged capable and stronger than before. Despite moments of progress, Naomi struggled with trust. She did not yet understand Elias fully. She saw him as strict, distant, and sometimes intimidating, and she could not forget the circumstances that had brought her to the ranch. Her mind often wandered back to her village, imagining her parents' faces, the songs of her people, and the safety of familiar paths. Even as she worked hard, she felt a constant tension between fear and hope. She wanted to believe that Elias could be more than what she feared, but the uncertainty was difficult to overcome. One afternoon, Naomi encountered a challenge that was both physical and emotional. A storm had rolled in unexpectedly, bringing heavy rain and strong winds. The animals were restless, and the ranch became chaotic. Naomi was tasked with helping secure the animals, moving quickly through the mud and slippery paths. The wind whipped against her face, and rain soaked her clothes. At one point she slipped and nearly fell, her heart pounding with fear. Elias was there in an instant, steadying her and guiding her to safety. The intensity of the moment left Naomi shaken, but also profoundly aware of Elias' presence. She realized that, despite his stern demeanor, he cared for her well-being in ways she had not expected. After the storm passed, Naomi found herself reflecting deeply on her life at the ranch. She began to see that fear, while powerful, did not define her. She was capable of learning, adapting, and surviving. The challenges she faced were teaching her lessons about patience, resilience, and observation. Each day, she discovered something new, not only about the ranch and its animals, but also about herself and the human spirit. Naomi began to understand that strength was not just physical, it was emotional, mental, and sometimes spiritual. She carried within her a growing sense of empowerment, even in a place that had once seemed so foreign and frightening. Elias also continued to reveal layers of his character, though Naomi did not always recognize them at first. He was a man of routine and order, but he was also thoughtful and perceptive. He noticed Naomi's struggles without forcing her, and he offered guidance without overbearing control. Slowly, Naomi began to sense a complexity in him, a mixture of discipline, care, and hidden kindness. She could see that he had his own burdens, experiences that had shaped the man he had become. Though their worlds were different, she started to understand that humans were capable of change, growth, and compassion, even in unexpected circumstances. As Naomi spent more time on the ranch, she also began to appreciate the land itself. The fields stretched wide, the mountains loomed majestically in the distance, and the animals moved with grace and rhythm. There was beauty in the routines of the ranch, the quiet moments of feeding the horses, the sounds of the wind through the trees, the warmth of the sun breaking through clouds after a storm. Naomi realized that even though she had been brought here against her will, she could still find moments of peace and reflection. These glimpses of beauty became small anchors in her day, reminders that life could hold both challenge and wonder. One evening, after a particularly long day of work, Naomi sat quietly outside the ranch house. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. She thought about her journey so far, the challenges she had faced, and the lessons she had learned. She felt a mixture of emotions, fear, longing, curiosity, and even a hint of hope. Naomi realized that her time at the ranch, while difficult, was teaching her resilience and patience. She was learning to observe, to adapt, and to understand people and the world around her in ways she had never imagined. During these reflective moments, Naomi also began to notice subtle gestures from Elias that hinted at his deeper character. He would occasionally check on her without being asked, ensure she had enough food, or quietly guide her when she faced a difficult task. These small actions, though not always spoken aloud, conveyed respect and care. Naomi began to understand that redemption, kindness, and courage were often shown through actions rather than words. She started to see Elias as a man shaped by his experiences, capable of both strength and compassion. By the end of this part of her journey, Naomi had begun to accept that life at the ranch would not be simple, but it could be meaningful. She understood that fear was a natural response, but it did not have to control her. She carried within her the lessons of her people, the courage of her ancestors, the wisdom of the elders, and the strength of her own spirit. Naomi realized that even in a world so different from her own, she could find ways to endure, learn, and grow. Though she still missed her village deeply, Naomi began to see the ranch as a place of possibility. It was a place where challenges tested her, where fears could be confronted, and where trust could slowly be built. She knew that her journey was far from over, and that there would be many more trials ahead. But she also knew that she had the inner strength to face them. Naomi had discovered that courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to move forward despite it. And so life at the ranch continued, with its mixture of labor, challenges, and small moments of understanding. Naomi and Elias were learning about each other, even if slowly, through observation, action, and quiet reflection. Naomi was discovering resilience she had not known she possessed, and Elias was beginning to reveal the capacity for empathy that could redeem even the most complex situations. The foundation of their story was being laid, brick by careful brick, in the midst of fear, labor, and the unexpected beauty of the ranch life. Life at the ranch had settled into a rhythm for Naomi, though it was far from comfortable. She had learned to carry out her chores with more confidence and to navigate the routines of the ranch, but her mind was still heavy with questions about why she was there and what the future held. Naomi had grown more observant, noticing the small acts of care Elias displayed without drawing attention to them. He would make sure the animals were calm before she approached, quietly adjust her work tools to make tasks easier, and sometimes offer simple advice without pressure. These gestures did not erase her fear, but they planted the seeds of trust, which Naomi noticed slowly taking root in her heart. One morning, Naomi woke to find the sky unusually gray. A cold wind swept across the ranch, signaling that the weather was about to turn harsh. The horses in the stables were restless, pawing at the ground and whinnying loudly. Naomi had been tasked with leading them to shelter, a job she had handled before but always with Elias nearby. Today, however, he was called away to check the fences along the northern field. Naomi felt a flutter of anxiety in her chest. For the first time, she would have to manage the horses on her own. She took a deep breath and reminded herself of the lessons she had learned. She had watched Elias closely over the past weeks, seeing how he approached the animals with calm authority. She imitated his movements, speaking softly to the horses and approaching them with steady hands. For a few moments, the animals seemed agitated, but slowly they began to follow her lead. Naomi felt a surge of pride, realizing that she was capable of guiding them even without Elias' immediate presence. Suddenly, a young foal broke free from the group, running wildly toward the fence at the edge of the property. Naomi's heart raced. The foal was small and fragile, and if it collided with the fence or stumbled in the mud, it could be seriously hurt. Naomi sprinted after it, calling out in a calm but firm voice. Her hands were trembling, her body straining, but she refused to give up. She remembered the stories her elders had told her about courage, not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. Naomi's every step reflected that courage. Just as she reached out to catch the foal, the ground beneath her foot shifted and she slipped in the mud. She fell hard, scraping her arm and twisting her ankle. Pain shot through her body, and for a moment, Naomi felt the old fear rise sharply, threatening to overwhelm her. But then she heard a familiar voice, calm but urgent. Elias had returned, seeing the foal running into danger. He dashed through the mud without hesitation, reaching Naomi and the young horse in time to steady both. He guided Naomi to her feet, checking her arm and ankle with quiet concern. His actions were swift, confident, and protective. Naomi looked at him with wide eyes, a mixture of gratitude, awe, and confusion swirling inside her. She realized in that instant that Elias was more than the strict, distant figure she had first feared. He had risked himself to protect her, showing a level of care that spoke louder than words ever could. In that moment, the walls Naomi had built around her heart began to crack. She saw a man capable of kindness, bravery, and responsibility, a man who, despite his harsh exterior, could act with genuine compassion. After the incident, Naomi spent the day tending to her scraped arm and sore ankle, reflecting on what had happened. She realized that her fear, while natural, had sometimes clouded her ability to see the truth about people. Elias was not her enemy. He was a complex human being, shaped by his experiences and his environment. Naomi began to understand that the world was not always simple or divided into good and bad. There were shades of gray, moments of challenge and opportunities for understanding. In the days that followed, Naomi noticed subtle changes in her interactions with Elias. She observed him more closely, seeing how he moved through the ranch, how he treated the animals, and how he approached each task with patience and care. She began to ask herself questions she had not considered before. Could a person truly change? Could someone who seemed stern and distant become a source of guidance and support? Naomi found herself quietly testing these ideas, noticing how Elias responded when she asked for advice or assistance. Elias, for his part, recognized the shift in Naomi. He saw her growing confidence, her careful observation, and her willingness to face challenges head-on. He respected her resilience, understanding that trust could not be demanded but had to be earned. He began to offer more guidance, sharing insights about ranch life and the animals in ways that invited her to learn, rather than imposing authority. These small acts built a foundation of mutual respect, allowing Naomi to see Elias as a teacher and protector, not simply a captor. One afternoon, Naomi encountered another test of courage. A fire had started in a distant field, sparked by a stray ember from a controlled burn nearby. The flames spread quickly, threatening the livestock and the barns. Naomi's first instinct was to panic, but she remembered Elias' calm approach during the storm and the lessons she had learned. She ran to the stables, helping to herd the animals to safety while keeping herself aware of the growing fire. She called out to Elias, who appeared almost immediately, and together they worked to guide the horses and cattle to a safe area. The fire was intense, but Naomi noticed that Elias remained composed, giving clear instructions and acting decisively. His courage inspired her, and she realized that bravery was contagious. By working together, they managed to save the animals and prevent major damage to the ranch. Naomi felt a sense of accomplishment she had never experienced before. She had faced danger, acted with determination, and contributed to the safety of the ranch. More importantly, she had begun to see Elias as a man capable of extraordinary goodness, even in the midst of danger. After the fire, there was a quiet moment between Naomi and Elias. They sat on the porch of the ranch house, watching the smoke drift away. Elias spoke softly, acknowledging Naomi's efforts and praising her courage. Naomi felt a warmth in her chest, a sense of connection she had not expected. She realized that trust and understanding were not instant, but they could grow through shared experiences and acts of compassion. This moment marked a turning point in her perception of Elias, a recognition that he was not simply a figure of authority, but a human being capable of redemption. In the following weeks, Naomi continued to face challenges that tested her patience, strength, and courage. Each experience, from tending to difficult animals to navigating the complexities of ranch life, reinforced the lessons she had learned. She discovered that fear could be managed, that resilience could be cultivated, and that understanding others required observation, empathy, and patience. Naomi also began to see that Elias was not perfect. He had his own flaws and burdens, but he was willing to act with integrity and care when it mattered most. As the seasons changed, Naomi's bond with Elias grew, not through words alone but through shared experience and mutual respect. She observed the quiet ways he supported her, and she responded with effort, diligence, and a willingness to learn. Their interactions were no longer defined by fear or distance, but by recognition of each other's strengths and vulnerabilities. Naomi began to understand that human relationships were complex, shaped by actions, choices, and the courage to change. One evening, Naomi sat quietly by the ranch fence, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The sky was painted in brilliant shades of orange and purple, reflecting on the calmness she felt inside. She thought about her journey, from the fear of being taken from her village to the challenges of adapting to ranch life, to the moments of danger that had tested her courage. She realized that she had grown stronger, more resilient, and more aware of the complexities of human nature. Naomi also reflected on Elias, considering the man who had once seemed distant and unapproachable. She recognized the courage, integrity, and subtle kindness he had shown. In many ways, Elias had redeemed himself in her eyes, not through grand gestures alone, but through consistent actions that demonstrated care, protection, and respect. Naomi understood that redemption was not a one-time event, but a continuous process, built through choices and deeds. By the end of this part of her story, Naomi had undergone a profound transformation. She had faced fear, danger, and uncertainty, and she had emerged with a deeper understanding of herself and the people around her. She had learned to see beyond appearances, to recognize the complexity of human nature, and to appreciate the value of trust, empathy, and courage. Naomi's journey was far from over, but she had taken the crucial step of opening her heart to understanding, forgiveness, and hope. The ranch, once a place of fear and uncertainty, had become a setting for growth, learning, and unexpected connection. Naomi had discovered that life's challenges could reveal hidden strengths, and that even in difficult circumstances, humans were capable of change and redemption. Her experiences had prepared her for the next phase of her journey, where trust, compassion, and courage would continue to shape her story. And so, Naomi faced each day with renewed determination. She knew that there would be more tests ahead, but she also knew that she possessed the inner strength to face them. She had learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. She had discovered that understanding others required patience, observation, and empathy. And she had realized that even in the most challenging situations, redemption and goodness were possible, shaping not only the lives of others but her own as well. Life at the ranch had begun to take on a new rhythm for Naomi. She had faced fear, danger, and uncertainty, and she had discovered a resilience she had never known she possessed. The days were still long and the work was demanding, but there was a growing sense of purpose in her actions. Naomi no longer simply endured the ranch. She began to navigate it with confidence and awareness, learning not only the practical tasks but also the deeper lessons about trust, courage, and humanity. Elias had noticed this transformation. The young woman who had once arrived trembling with fear now moved with careful assurance. Her hands were steady, her observations sharp, and her instincts increasingly reliable. Elias recognized that Naomi's growth was not just about physical ability. It was about strength of character, emotional resilience, and the capacity to understand others. He respected her determination, and he understood that trust could not be demanded, it had to be earned. His approach toward Naomi became gentler, more patient, yet still firm when guidance was needed. One morning, a new challenge arose. A severe drought had begun to affect the ranch, threatening the health of the crops and the water supply for the animals. The land was dry and cracked, and the heat of the sun was relentless. Elias called Naomi to his side, explaining the situation and the importance of immediate action. She listened carefully, absorbing his instructions and preparing to face the daunting task ahead. The drought was not only a test of physical endurance, but also of problem-solving and teamwork. Naomi felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders, but she welcomed it as an opportunity to prove her growing skills and determination. Together, Elias and Naomi devised a plan to conserve water, provide sufficient hydration for the animals, and tend to the crops that were most at risk. The work was grueling, requiring long hours under the blazing sun. Naomi's arms ached from lifting buckets, her feet were sore from walking across the parched fields, and her skin was sunburned and tired. Yet she persevered. She had learned to rely on her own strength and judgment, and she found satisfaction in the small victories. Each animal safely hydrated, each plant carefully tended. Through the struggle, she discovered a sense of accomplishment and purpose that went beyond mere survival. Elias observed Naomi's efforts closely. He saw the dedication in her movements, the careful attention to detail, and the unyielding determination in her eyes. He began to understand that redemption was not only about correcting past mistakes, it was also about creating opportunities for others to grow and succeed. By trusting Naomi with responsibility, by allowing her to take initiative, Elias was showing her a kind of respect that transcended authority. Naomi, in turn, began to see Elias not just as a rancher or a figure of control, but as a guide, a protector, and someone capable of understanding and supporting another human being. One evening, after an especially exhausting day, Naomi and Elias sat by the edge of the fields, watching the sun set in brilliant shades of red and gold. Elias spoke softly, sharing stories of his own childhood, the challenges he had faced, and the lessons he had learned. Naomi listened intently, realizing that this man she had once feared had a depth and complexity she had not imagined. His words revealed a past filled with hardships, mistakes, and difficult choices, but also moments of courage, kindness, and growth. Through his stories, Naomi began to understand the concept of redemption in a new way. It was not about perfection, but about the willingness to act with integrity, to take responsibility, and to make amends through consistent deeds. As the weeks passed, Naomi faced another challenge that tested both her courage and her emerging trust in Elias. A young calf had fallen into a narrow ravine near the edge of the ranch. The animal struggled, calling out in distress, and Naomi felt a surge of panic. She remembered the stories of her people, the lessons of courage and quick thinking, and she knew she had to act. She ran to the ravine, assessing the situation carefully. The steep walls made it difficult to reach the calf safely, and she could see the danger clearly. Elias arrived moments later, not with anger or command, but with calm, steady guidance. He instructed Naomi on how to approach the calf, how to secure a rope, and how to work together to lift it to safety. The rescue was tense and required patience, strength, and teamwork. Naomi and Elias moved in sync, carefully guiding the calf up the slope. The animal was frightened and struggled, but with calm determination and steady hands, they succeeded. When the calf was finally safe, Naomi felt an overwhelming sense of relief and accomplishment. She looked at Elias, and for the first time, she saw him not just as a protector but as a partner in facing life's challenges. In that moment, the foundation of trust and mutual respect between them solidified, built on shared experiences and acts of courage. In the days following the rescue, Naomi began to reflect on her journey more deeply. She thought about her life before the ranch, the fear and uncertainty she had experienced, and the lessons she had learned through struggle and observation. She realized that her time on the ranch had taught her more than physical skills. It had taught her patience, resilience, empathy, and the importance of understanding others. Naomi began to see herself as an active participant in her own story, capable of shaping her experiences through courage, thoughtfulness, and determination. Elias, too, continued to show the depth of his character. He took deliberate steps to support Naomi, not through words alone but through consistent action. He created opportunities for her to demonstrate her abilities, offered guidance when needed, and respected her perspective and judgment. Naomi noticed that redemption, as Elias demonstrated, was not about grand gestures or dramatic acts. It was about daily choices, consistent care, and the willingness to take responsibility for the well-being of others. Through his actions, Elias had become a living example of how a person could change and grow, even in the face of past mistakes or misjudgments. One afternoon, Naomi faced another unexpected challenge. A wild horse, frightened by the wind, had broken through the fence and was running toward the edge of the property. Naomi's initial instinct was fear, but she remembered the lessons she had learned from Elias and her own growing experience. She took a deep breath, approached the horse slowly, and used calm, steady movements to gain its trust. Elias appeared at her side, not to take control, but to assist and guide. Together, they managed to lead the horse back to the corral safely. Naomi felt a sense of pride and empowerment unlike anything she had experienced before. She had confronted fear, acted decisively, and worked in harmony with Elias to achieve a positive outcome. Through these experiences, Naomi began to understand the true meaning of redemption and human connection. She realized that people could grow, change, and demonstrate goodness, even when their past actions were imperfect. Elias had shown her that redemption was not a single moment but a continuous process, expressed through consistent care, guidance, and integrity. Naomi saw that her own journey was intertwined with his, that learning to trust and understand him allowed her to grow as well. The ranch had become more than a place of work or survival. It had become a place of learning, reflection, and mutual growth. As the seasons changed, Naomi continued to develop her skills and confidence. She learned to anticipate the needs of the animals, to manage the challenges of the ranch with foresight and care, and to navigate the complexities of human relationships with patience and understanding. She began to see Elias not as a distant authority figure but as a mentor and ally. Their bond, built through shared experiences, challenges, and acts of courage, became a foundation for mutual respect and trust. Naomi understood that true growth required not only facing external challenges, but also confronting internal fears and assumptions. In quiet moments, Naomi reflected on the changes within herself. She had arrived at the ranch fearful and uncertain, but she had learned to trust her instincts, to act with courage, and to see the humanity in others, even in those she had once feared. She realized that growth often came through struggle, and that redemption was possible for anyone willing to act with integrity and care. Naomi began to see her life not as a series of obstacles, but as a journey filled with opportunities for learning, connection, and personal transformation. By the end of this part of her story, Naomi had undergone a profound emotional transformation. She had faced fear, danger, and uncertainty, and she had emerged with a deeper understanding of herself, Elias, and the world around her. The ranch, once a place of apprehension and isolation, had become a setting for growth, courage, and unexpected connection. Naomi had discovered that trust and redemption were built through consistent action, empathy, and courage. She had learned that understanding others required patience, observation, and an open heart, and she had begun to see the possibility of hope and goodness even in challenging circumstances. And so, Naomi continued her life at the ranch with renewed determination, confidence, and a sense of purpose. She knew that more challenges lay ahead, but she also knew that she had the strength, wisdom, and resilience to face them. Elias had shown her that even those who seemed distant or strict could demonstrate extraordinary care and redemption. Naomi had learned to see beyond fear and assumptions, recognizing the potential for growth, compassion, and understanding in herself and others. The journey was far from over, but she had taken the vital steps toward trust, empathy, and the realization that true human connection was built on courage, action, and integrity. By the time the seasons had shifted and the ranch began to settle into its quieter rhythm, Naomi had undergone a transformation that she herself could hardly believe. The young woman who had arrived months ago, trembling with fear and uncertainty, had grown into someone strong, confident, and wise beyond her years. She had learned to manage the ranch's animals, to carry out difficult tasks with skill, and to face challenges that once would have left her paralyzed with fear. But more importantly, she had grown emotionally. She had learned to observe carefully, to understand people and situations, and to recognize kindness, courage, and redemption where it existed. Naomi's relationship with Elias had also changed profoundly. What had started as fear and mistrust had evolved into understanding, mutual respect, and even friendship. She had come to see Elias not only as a man of authority, but as a person of deep character, someone who had made mistakes, carried burdens, and yet demonstrated the ability to grow, care, and act with integrity. Through his consistent actions, his guidance, and his protection, Elias had redeemed himself in Naomi's eyes. She understood now that true redemption was not about grand gestures or dramatic displays, but about consistent, thoughtful action over time. One morning, Naomi awoke to a particularly beautiful sunrise, the sky painted with brilliant shades of orange, pink, and purple. The air was cool, carrying the scent of the earth and the animals. She took a moment to reflect on her journey. She thought about her village, her family, and the life she had once known. She thought about the fear she had felt when she was first brought to the ranch, and the moments of courage she had discovered within herself. She realized that though her life had taken an unexpected turn, she had gained experiences, wisdom, and strength that she would carry with her forever. Elias approached her quietly, carrying a small basket of food and water. He did not speak immediately, giving Naomi a moment to finish her reflections. Then he spoke in his calm, steady voice, acknowledging her growth and her efforts on the ranch. "You have learned quickly, Naomi," he said. "You have faced fear and danger, and you have done so with courage and wisdom. You should be proud of yourself." Naomi felt a warmth spread through her chest. She had never expected such acknowledgement, and yet she felt a deep sense of gratitude, not only for his words but for the support, guidance, and protection he had consistently offered throughout her time at the ranch. That day, Naomi faced a decision she had been thinking about for weeks. She knew that returning to her village would be possible soon, that her people might be expecting her, and that she could once again be with her family and friends. Yet she also recognized that leaving the ranch meant leaving behind a place where she had grown, learned, and discovered the depths of her own courage. She realized that her journey was not just about returning home. It was about understanding the people and experiences that had shaped her along the way. Naomi resolved to leave with gratitude, wisdom, and a newfound appreciation for the complexities of human nature. Before departing, Naomi spent time walking through the ranch one last time. She observed the animals, noting how they had grown accustomed to her presence and how she had learned to care for them. She reflected on the land itself, the fields, the fences, the barns, and she felt a sense of connection to it that she had not anticipated. This place, which had once seemed alien and frightening, had become a setting for growth, courage, and understanding. Naomi realized that life often brought challenges that tested us, but through perseverance, observation, and empathy, we could transform even the most difficult circumstances into opportunities for learning and personal growth. As she prepared to leave, Elias approached Naomi. He did not try to stop her or persuade her to stay. Instead, he offered her words of encouragement and a gesture of respect. "You have proven yourself," he said. "You have shown courage, wisdom, and resilience. Whatever you do next, carry these lessons with you." Naomi felt tears welling in her eyes. She had not expected such acknowledgement, and yet it filled her with a profound sense of closure and understanding. She recognized that Elias' redemption had been more than personal. It had been a gift to her, a demonstration of what it meant to act with integrity, courage, and care. As Naomi rode away from the ranch, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She remembered the fear and uncertainty of her arrival, the challenges she had faced with the animals and the land, and the moments of crisis that had tested her courage. She recalled the storm, the runaway foal, the fire, and the young calf in the ravine, all situations that had forced her to confront fear, adapt quickly, and act with determination. She realized that each challenge had been an opportunity to grow, to understand herself and others, and to recognize the power of trust, patience, and courage. When Naomi returned to her village, she was welcomed with relief and joy. Her family embraced her, their faces full of love and concern. Naomi shared her experiences, speaking not only of the challenges she had faced, but of the lessons she had learned. She told them of Elias, of his guidance, protection, and quiet kindness, and of how he had redeemed himself in her eyes. The villagers listened, impressed by her courage and moved by the depth of her understanding. Naomi realized that her journey had not only shaped her own character, but also had the potential to inspire others, to demonstrate the power of resilience, empathy, and redemption. Over time, Naomi found that the lessons she had learned at the ranch continued to influence her life. She approached challenges with confidence and patience, recognizing that fear was not an obstacle to be avoided, but a signal to act thoughtfully and courageously. She carried the memory of Elias' redemption as a reminder that humans were capable of change, that kindness and integrity could transform lives, and that trust and understanding were built through consistent action. Naomi's experiences had given her a perspective that was both compassionate and wise, allowing her to navigate life with grace, courage, and resilience. Naomi also realized that redemption was not a destination, but a journey. She saw that Elias had demonstrated this truth through his actions, not by words alone, but by consistently acting with integrity, care, and courage. She understood that people could grow, learn from mistakes, and become better versions of themselves through thoughtfulness, empathy, and consistent effort. This understanding became a guiding principle in Naomi's life, shaping her relationships, her decisions, and her approach to challenges. As the years passed, Naomi continued to reflect on her time at the ranch, the lessons she had learned, and the growth she had experienced. She realized that the hardships she had faced were not merely obstacles, but opportunities to discover courage, to build trust, to understand the complexities of human nature, and to witness the transformative power of redemption. Naomi recognized that life was filled with unexpected turns, but that each challenge could be met with patience, observation, and an open heart. The memory of Elias and the ranch remained a source of inspiration for Naomi. She often thought of the ways he had guided her, protected her, and demonstrated integrity through his actions. She reflected on the quiet moments of understanding, the shared experiences of courage and problem-solving, and the lessons of resilience and empathy that had shaped her journey. Naomi understood that redemption was not a single act, but a process that unfolded through consistent choices, care, and courage. Elias had shown her that even those who seemed distant or strict could act with profound kindness and integrity, leaving a lasting impact on the lives of others. In her village, Naomi became a source of inspiration and wisdom. She shared her experiences with younger members of her community, teaching them not only the practical skills she had learned at the ranch, but also the deeper lessons of courage, trust, empathy, and redemption. She emphasized the importance of observing carefully, understanding others, and acting with integrity, demonstrating through her own life that true growth often came from facing challenges, embracing learning, and recognizing the potential for goodness in people. Naomi also learned to balance her appreciation for her heritage with the lessons she had gained from her time at the ranch. She continued to honor the traditions of her people, the wisdom of the elders, and the strength of her ancestors, while applying the insights she had gained about resilience, trust, and human connection. This balance allowed her to navigate life with confidence, empathy, and wisdom, drawing on both her cultural roots and her lived experiences to make thoughtful and courageous decisions. In the end, Naomi's journey was not simply about returning home, it was about transformation. She had faced fear, uncertainty, and hardship, and she had emerged stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. She had witnessed the power of redemption through Elia's actions, understanding that integrity, courage, and consistent care could transform lives. She had discovered the depths of her own strength, resilience, and wisdom, realizing that even in challenging circumstances, hope, growth, and understanding were possible. Naomi's story serves as a testament to the human spirit, the capacity to endure, to learn, to grow, and to recognize goodness in others. Her journey reminds us that even in the most difficult circumstances, people are capable of courage, empathy, and transformation. Redemption is possible for anyone willing to act with integrity, care, and consistent effort, and trust can be rebuilt through patience, observation, and shared experiences. Naomi carried these lessons with her for the rest of her life, shaping her actions, relationships, and perspective, leaving a lasting impact on all who knew her. And so, Naomi walked forward into the future, carrying the lessons of fear, courage, trust, and redemption in her heart. She knew that challenges would continue to arise, but she also knew that she possessed the inner strength, wisdom, and resilience to face them. The experiences at the ranch had transformed her life, teaching her to see beyond appearances, to recognize the potential for goodness, and to act with courage and integrity. Naomi's journey had come full circle, from fear to understanding, from uncertainty to confidence, and from isolation to connection. She had discovered the enduring power of the human spirit and the profound impact of redemption in action.